Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the next installment of Lineage Independent Publishing's virtual launch parties. My name is Michael Hurd, and I'm the author of the Germans Lineage Series Book 6. My moderator today is Lisa Talbott, who just happens to be in Portugal, way across the pond, and I'm glad everybody could be joining us. If you are watching this as a recording, I will still be able to answer your questions offline. Just please feel free to post them in the comments field and we'll be ready to rock and roll. So before Lisa gets started with grilling me about my latest release, we'll give this a couple of minutes to allow people to join the program. Hello, Sue, and happy birthday. I won't say how old you are because I don't want to embarrass you, but I'm glad you could join us. Sue is my sister-in-law, by the way. Hello, Patty. Glad to see you. Sandy's here too. Sandy says hello, and
hello,
Patty,
Sandy.
Good evening to both of us. So let's see who else we get. Okay, we still only have three, but three. Okay, so we can sit and chit chat for a minute, and we can whenever you feel comfortable, we can rock and roll. So Lisa, it's all yours.
Okay, well. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Obviously Mike's just introduced himself, and I would just like to have a minute or two to tell everybody how Mike and I met. Well, met in loose form. I first met Mike because I'd written a poem that Mike wanted to use as one of his chapter separators in a book that he had written. So he approached me, and then this prompted him to read more of my poetry. And after that, he said, "Why don't you write a novel?" And I thought, this man's crazy. I could never write a whole novel. Anyway, that was about 18 months ago, Mike.
Something like that. But now you're remembering, you're forgetting the compilation of poetry and prose that was released way before the novel was put out.
Yeah.
Remember, Weeping Whale came first.
Anyway. That's right. Yes, I'd forgotten about that. But anyway, so yes, after about a few thousand words, I sent to Mike, and then he produced my first novel. But before that, yes, he asked me to send a lot of poems, which I did, and then I started to write a few short stories. And then you produced Weeping Whale. And then after that, you got a few more authors under your belt. And how exciting is that? Because Lineage Independent Publishing is just expanding really rapidly. So now that you are building up such a portfolio, Mike, how do you find the time to do everything? You know, you write, you produce works for other authors, you do all the cooking. Is that right, Sandy, or is that just Mike's humor? But he's always saying, I've got to go and get the dinner ready. So how do you find the time to fit everything in, Mike?
I just do. I mean, it's not like I sit and try to schedule things. I look for little chunks of time where I can spend half an hour, 45 minutes on writing, another time that I'll spend editing or formatting somebody else's books. But I tend to do most of my work late at night. I mean, I find it more comfortable for me to have 2 or 3 hours before I go to bed. It helps me unwind. It helps me relax. And so, like yesterday, for example, I actually wrote most of the day yesterday on book 7. I think I wrote between 10 and 15 pages just yesterday alone. But
I know you did.
It's so I just find time whenever it fits into our schedule at home. Sandy's been very, very patient with me throughout the whole process. Is that she, accepts the fact that there are times when I just want to go sit in my office and write. So, and Sandy did say that you are correct, Lisa, that I've been cooking for over 41 years. She did put that in the feed, so it's a matter of record now.
Oh yeah, right, Mike. The Germans.
Yes.
Now, where did you learn your German from? I mean, was it passed down to you? Because I mean, obviously you've got German ancestry, and you're quite fluent, aren't you?
Not really. I spoke German. I learned German when I was in high school.
Oh,
Started as a freshman when I was about 14 years old, and then the next 2 years after that, studied German in high school, and then went to Germany as an exchange program from New Hampshire in 1975, I think it was 75 or 76, one of those 2 years, and spent 4.5 weeks over in Germany, basically speaking very little English, and it has stuck even after this many years. I've had other language training as well, where English was not allowed in the classroom at all, and
oh,
as a result, the instructor for the other language that I speak, the instructor insisted that we if we couldn't speak in that language, that we would speak in another language that he understood. So German was my fallback. So I got it reinforced as an adult, and it just there are phrases that stick with me. But the funny thing is my grandparents were both brought up in German-speaking households until they were teenagers. And yet, when they got to be adults, the only time that they would speak German to anybody was to each other, when they didn't want my mother and her brother and sister to understand what they were talking about.
which is in your book, isn't it? The
Yes,
German, where they
yes.
do that.
So I did bring that
So
out, but
they only
more.
speak the language when they're.
You're breaking up, Lisa.
Pardon? Oh, can you not hear me?
No, you're good now. You were breaking up. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay, yes. Right. So I'm going to ask another question until the audience start asking questions, if that's okay.
Well, we've only got 3 people watching us right now. We've got Patty, Sandy,
Okay.
and Sue. So
Oh,
unless they want to ask questions, it's not going to really matter that much. So you might
okay.
as well just press on.
Okay, because I know Paddy, she's definitely she must be trying to get through. You write a lot about your ancestry and your family. When you're writing your books, do you liaise with any other family members? I know you have an older cousin. I mean, does he have any input that he can give you on your lineage?
He has very little, or has done very little work on the actual connecting the dots between generations. What he has provided insight on is when I wrote my 3rd book, Iniquity and Retribution. The characters in that book are based on my great grandparents. And what has happened there was that they were some pretty bizarre characters. My this is on my father's side, so one of the 2 pairs on my father's side. My great grandmother was a teetotaling Methodist Bible thumper, for lack of a better term to put it. And
Just like me.
her husband, my great grandfather, was, how should I say it? His history was filled with peccadillos and dalliances with members of both sexes.
Wow.
And my cousin knew a little bit about all this stuff, and he, a storyline about one of the main characters being a social worker was true, because my great grandmother was a badged police officer, but it was more of a social worker position than anything else. And then my great grandfather was an employee of the Railway Mail Service. Now, of course, the Royal Mail delivers, has trains running up and down the UK to deliver the mail to the towns along the way. Well, we had the similar service here in the US, and he was one of the people that sorted the mail on the cross-country trains. Well, he'd have overnight stops along the way, and this is where he got involved with other people, and but anyway, that whole book is so bizarre in the way I had to construct it, again based on my cousin's input, that it was it was almost scary to write it. So, Pat, I think that answers your question as well. Pat asks, if the characters are essentially my family, how do you feel when you have to include an ancestor who is less than desirable? And I did in book 3. So
yeah, I just loved the ending of Wayward Son. Oh, I thought that was just beautiful, but I'm not going to give any spoilers away.
no, that was book 4. So
Oh, right, okay.
yeah, Nicotine Retribution was 3, Wayward Son's 4.
You readers,
Oh, Pat asked another question, so Pat asked me how I feel when I have to include an ancestor who's less than desirable. Pat, I think that the answer to that is it makes me squirm a little bit, because I really sometimes don't like finding some of the things that I find out, through my research. My great grandfather was murdered. I had to basically throw my great grandmother under the bus in the book, because in one of the books, because she was the alleged perpetrator, but they never were able to prove it. And this was back in 1894, so it was before modern forensics or even fingerprints. So it makes me squirm a little bit when I have to include some of the unsavory aspects of my family tree. Does that answer your question?
It must also make you feel differently towards them.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you find out that you've got skeletons buried in your closet. I mean, I even found out that some members of my family were slaveholders, which was kind of bizarre.
Right. Well, can I ask another question then?
You certainly may.
Okay. So, what made you decide to write your first novel? I mean, we know that you have written in a professional stance years ago, but what made you write fiction? Well, it's historical fiction.
Again, it was when I started digging into our family tree, probably back in 2014, 2015, and even a little bit before that. Our eldest son, Adam, before he passed away, had done some digging into family tree information, and then provided me with his notes a while before he passed. And then I let that sit for several years, and then one day I was home recovering from some ankle surgery, and I started putting bits and pieces together. Well, over a period of about 4 years, I managed to build a family tree. Excuse me for just a second. I managed to build a family tree that at that point had some 3,000 people in it. And then I started to look deeper into the stories of some of the people, and I started finding places where the family tree paralleled with events in history, namely the great grandfather that got murdered, or found a connection to Aaron Burr, who was the vice president under Thomas Jefferson, and he was the person that got involved in a duel with Alexander Hamilton and killed Alexander Hamilton. So, all of these little unsavory bits that I keep uncovering, I was finding in each generation, there was a story to be told.
Wow.
So I took all of those findings and then wrapped them up into, for the first book, is 13 chapters. Each of them tells a story about some point in my family tree where there was an intersect. And then each of those chapters, I'm trying to turn into a full-length novel. Well, I'm up to the 6th chapter now with book 7. Spinning on. So I think in the end, there's going to be 14 books in the series. So, it's a daunting task, but at the same time, it is so much fun to do the research.
Yeah.
So Pat asks another question. How does Sandy feel about her husband having 3 strange women taking up so much of my time? And does she read our books as well as yours? I don't try to push Sandy to read one book or another. If she's interested, they're there for her to read. my books. She's worked on editing about half of them, and the other half, because of time constraints, I didn't want to delay publication. So the last two, book 5, The Seventh Wife, and book 6, The Germans, she had very little to do with compiling the Germans, and spot checked The Seventh Wife before it was released. So, and she reads other things. She has, spends her time knitting, and my books are not available in audiobook format yet. So while she's knitting, she can be listening to an audiobook, which she can multitask. She can knit and listen, where if reading my book, she has to actually hold the book.
Has Sandy ever asked you to write a book on her ancestry?
Well, it's kind of funny because we've got a couple of places in our histories where our family trees actually intersect.
Really?
Yeah.
That's going to be good.
A long time ago, but still, it's like 5 generations ago, and so they do intersect, and it's just really interesting. But her family tree is a lot more fragmented than mine, because the records that were kept on her father's side of the family in the southwestern parts of Virginia were not as reliable as those in the more industrialized eastern part of the state, or in the eastern part of the country at the time, simply because records were just family Bibles for the most part, and not necessarily reported to county authorities. So, and then her mother's side of the family, I keep hitting a brick wall when I cross the Atlantic Ocean and go back to Norfolk, England, because some of the records on that side of the pond are really hard to get at unless I pay a big increase on my Ancestry.com membership. So, I could at some point, for example, Sandy's got a person in her family tree whose last name is Grint, Grint. Well, what was the name of one of the characters in the Harry Potter movies that played one of the characters? Rupert Grint.
I've never heard of the surname before.
Okay. Well, anyway, so it's
wow.
An interesting thing there, where I would like to be able to prove some sort of a connection.
That would be really interesting.
It's just Pat said I can ask her to search. So I might just take you up on that offer at some point, Pat.
That's a really good idea. Yes. That'd be very interesting, wouldn't it, to do the
It would do, yeah.
Yes.
So I could possibly provide Pat with access to part of the family tree, and then let her help me fill it in from there. Don't know. See where that goes.
Oh, yeah. When you're writing, obviously, your historical facts, has anyone ever approached you and said, hey, we're probably related, because I'm sure that person is in my family tree as well? I mean, apart from your immediate family, yeah. I mean, has like a stranger come up to you and said, I've read one of your books and I'm sure we could be related? Wouldn't that be good if they did?
It would be interesting, but I have not had anybody reach out with any sort of connection like that yet. I've had a couple of people on Ancestry, on the U.S. side of Ancestry, say, hey, are you related to this person, that person, or whatever? And so, there have been a couple of places where I said, yes, but, and then the person, basically ghosted me after that. They didn't respond to anything else. Or another one that's, was arguing, no, that can't possibly be right because, and I said, well, my records show this, and this, and here's the draft cards, or the birth certificate copies, or the passenger manifest for the ships, or whatever, that says exactly what you're telling me is not true. So, I've been approached, but not in any way that's resulted in a durable contact.
Right. Okay. Just having a look through my notes. What would you do, Mike, if you ever went to a garage sale and one day you saw one of your books there, or we call them car boot sales. I think you called them garage sales. How would
Yeah,
you feel?
I would.
Would you say, hey, this is mine, who wants an autograph?
That's probably exactly what I do. I would love to. I would love to see my book sitting in somebody's garage sale.
Would you? You wouldn't
I
be
would.
offended that they were getting rid of it?
No, I would not be offended at all because it meant that they bought it in the first place.
Absolutely, absolutely. I often wonder, if people like, the big authors, and they go to garage sales or car boot sales, and you see boxes and boxes of books, would they look through and think, that's mine? Because I think I would. I'd say, you want my autograph, I'll sign it for you, keep it.
Either that or I'd pay $1 for it, $1 for it to get it back and then add it to my inventory and resell it later.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If it was any sort of condition.
So, how are you getting on with your book number 7, Mike? I know you said you've done about another. Did you say 10,000 words?
I've done 100 and hold on just a second. Let me flip over to my other screen here and I'll tell you exactly how many. I am on page 120 right now.
Wow.
So I can certainly figure out the word count. My word count right now is 22,000.
Wow. You see, I would consider that like, wow, I'm nearly halfway. I'd be really excited at that.
Yeah, for me, it's about a third of the way.
Yes, but in my mind, I think to myself, well, if I get 50,000, I can expand a lot more then. And I think once I reach 50, I tend to relax. Not that I'm agitated, but I just think, wow, I've got the backbone and I can just tart it up a little bit there. Right, Paddy's asked another question.
No, it's actually Sandy responding, Patty.
Oh, Sandy, yes. Oh, yeah. Paddy, I'm good. I'm in a neighbourhood book club. So read at least one book a month. I've gotten back into my knitting during the pandemic, so do more audio books. Yeah.
So, but
I think that's a great idea for people, especially people who want to do the knitting and have something in the background, and especially people who have who are probably blind and they have that benefit of having an audio book. But it's anything you've considered seriously or not?
I would consider it, but I think I'm a lot more comfortable doing short narrations like I have done for you, for Pat, and would like to keep doing that just because to me it's more fun for me to do that sort of thing. Trying to do it for the long term, it's really hard to maintain focus for that long to be able to do a good job on an audiobook. And it's just much easier to work in sound bites, So yeah. Sue, Sandy's sister, said that she loves the hard copy books herself.
I do. I always prefer to have a book so I can turn the pages. Yeah. I'm not into Kindle or anything like that. No.
And see, I'm exactly the opposite. If I'm reading, I much prefer because that's if we go on holiday or something like that, I'll read 3-4 books in the matter of a week. If I have time to read, so that much weight in your luggage adds up.
Well, yes, that's true. That's true.
So it's easier to have that electronic device and just flip through it or say, okay, I'm sitting someplace and I can read one book for a few minutes and then I'm tired of that and go on to it. Because I'll read 3 or 4 books at the same time if I'm reading.
How often do you read your own books?
Once I'm done with them, I go back and refer to them, but I don't necessarily go back and read. But like right now, behind me, I've got copies of book 1, sitting on the settee behind me because I need to refer back to it to make sure that my story in the other
That is
books is consistent with what I've already written.
Oh, right. Okay. You see, if I was doing that, I would look it up on my PC. I wouldn't look it up in a book,
Well,
because I think I would find it easier to do the edit and the word search for the word.
But
We're all different.
when I'm doing that, it's not necessarily that I'm looking for a specific word. I'm looking for something in the story. So it's just easier for me to visually scan it to make sure that I've kept the storyline consistent, in the current book that I'm working on. So it's daunting. Uh-oh, we lost somebody.
I would imagine it is. I don't know how you do it, because I know you spend a lot of time doing a lot of research, don't you?
I probably spend as much, if not more, time researching that as I do writing.
Yes.
Because I strive to make my books thematically accurate in a historical context, not necessarily right down to this particular dates of events or anything like that, but in the broader construct. For example, the seventh wife had to follow Henry VIII's timeline. All right, that was really critical that I followed that. But the story that happened on either side of that timeline, the events that happened around his events were complete fabrications. I mean, yes, we had cofferdams around the dockyards in London where they threw dead bodies and stuff, and that was mentioned in book 5. But overall, the research that I do is more to make sure that I don't have a Tesla when the Tesla car when the best that they had at the time was a Ford Fiesta. I mean, you have to get right down to the nitty gritty details. Would they have talked about something this way? And so that's it gets difficult when you try to do that. So Pat asked him. Go ahead, Lisa.
I was just going to say, in the seventh wife, you said obviously you like to have a lot of truth in it, but you fabricate stuff as well. I'm curious about the little incident with what was his name? Your main character in the seventh wife.
Sir Thomas.
When he had that, when he had that little liaison with the Queen. The Queen.
What about it? What about it?
Well, was that true? Or was that
I don't know. I mean, I would like to.
So,
I would like to think so, because she was which queen was she? She was somewhere down in the continent. Right. But anyway, she ended up becoming a very fat, dowdy woman.
That's right. Yes.
She had a thyroid problem. Now that was real. That part of it was real.
Yes. But I mean, obviously the liaison, that was probably just a little bit of wishful thinking.
I don't know. It probably was true. I mean, the nobility back then couldn't keep their hands off each other anyway.
No. Right. So Paddy says, do you belong to any writer groups?
The only ones, Pat, that I belong to are online. Just because I really don't have the time for it. And it's just I mean, you see me on Scribbler's Tavern, Share Short Stories, Alessandra Torres pages, and they're all writing related. I also am members of probably 3 different historical fiction author groups online. Again, getting involved in conversations with people I've never met face to face. So but it's all been text based or email based rather than face to face online like this.
Yeah. Are there any more questions coming through?
No, we still only got the 3 people watching us. I guess it's because it's still part of the work day over here.
Oh yes, of course it is. Would you ever consider writing anything out of your comfort zone? Oh, there you go.
I was asking the very same question.
that. I can't believe she's just typed that as I was saying that. Well, there you go. And we've not even discussed this. So, well, you've got to answer us both on that one then,
Well,
Mike.
I mean, I've dabbled with writing other things, and I would have to think long and hard about it because, you know, one of my other things that I like to read are crime novels. Uh, and so, you know, when I read some of those, I wonder if I could do just as well. But it's not something I'm seriously considering at the moment because I'm having so much fun writing what I'm writing and working with you three ladies to help you get your own books out and into the world. So, but so
Well,
at some point maybe. So Pat says she's roaring with laughter, and Sandy said that great minds think alike.
I can't believe that you could not make that up. You couldn't make. Can you just hold on 1 second? The dog's scratching at the door, and
Oh,
he's
sure.
chucking it down with rain. Come on, quick. Sorry about that.
That's quite all right.
This dog can't open the door. It's the other one that can open the door.
Oh,
With
okay.
it raining, she's out there in all the wet. So yeah,
So,
I mean.
So this thing with the like minds thinking, great minds thinking alike, reminds me of one of my overused words, serendipity.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Well, such a coincidence. Well, I've exhausted all my questions that I've. Oh no, I do have another one.
Okay, well, we have before you ask that, Lisa, we have a fourth person that's joined us. Who just joined us besides Sandy, Sue, and Pat? They'll tell us who they are eventually. Oh, it's Rebecca. Hello, Rebecca. Glad you could join us. Hopefully you didn't have any problems getting here. So anyway, go ahead.
Right. I would like to know what has been your favorite book that you've written and why? What's affected you by writing it, or how much did you put your heart and soul into it more than any of your others? So which has been the favorite one for you?
I would say that there's actually two that are very close to each other. Right?
Yeah.
There would be books 3 and 6. Book 3 being Iniquity and Retribution.
Yes.
And then book 6 being The Germans.
Loved it. Right.
You know, just because the Germans made me take a long, hard look at my mother's side of the family, which I hadn't done before, except for reading through rather humorous anecdotal notes from some of my great uncles, my mother's uncles, my grandfather's brothers and sisters, you know, and then looking at a rather rudimentary family tree that was put together back in the 1960s. So, you know, so that one from a research standpoint was the most fun to keep going. And then Iniquity and Retribution, just because of the being able to craft a cohesive, nasty, dark storyline the way I did, to me was just a lot of fun to be able to do.
Oh, good.
So Pat just made a comment.
Absolutely. Yes. She's even more convinced that we four have met in a past life. The links twixt us is too often and too spooky to be just my fancies. Yeah, well, you never
and
know.
we're all worlds away from each other. I mean, you're in Portugal, Pat's in the south of England,
UK.
And Rebecca is down in Florida, and here I sit in the middle of the East Coast, just north of Washington, D.C.
Yeah. And Sandy and I have that connection with Norfolk. And because Sandy has...
Yeah, her mother's
yes, that's right. Yeah. And then Paddy has a connection with Rebecca in Ireland. Oh, that's another question indeed. Are you interested in taking on more writers to join the group to build your empire?
my little fiefdom. It's not an empire. It's only a fiefdom right now.
Well, it's becoming that way.
But
It is
I
your
would
empire.
I would answer that question, Rebecca, with a very cautious yes. Just from the standpoint, I would want to see a sample of the person's writing, and be able to give them an honest assessment of whether I thought it was something that we would be interested in taking on. It all depends. The answer is a provisional yes.
Mm. Yes, I think it would have to be the kind of thing that you would enjoy producing as well.
Well, and Rebecca comes back with, I try.
Totally yeah, well, you are. You're a great mentor, Mike.
I try.
Yeah, well, you don't need to try any harder because you're just amazing.
And Sandy's going to pipe in and says, it's going to go to his head. Be careful.
Well, I'm going to leave it up to your audience to ask a few, and so say all of us. You need to share your skills. You do.
I'm trying.
Yes, you do share them. I think you're very encouraging, Mike. You know, you can read something and you can say, and without fear as well, which I think is a great thing. And us with you too. I think it's a lovely, comfortable feeling to be able to tell each other. I think you should, why not try this angle or use this word instead of that, or you've used serendipity about 6 times in on a page, you know, and I think that's a comfortable feeling when you can tell somebody without them taking offense, because none of us do.
Let's take that one step further. Why don't you talk about what your mother has done with my books? I mean, she's not afraid to tell me like it is.
And she does tell you like it is. And she does me as well, which is great. I would rather have somebody do that and be honest, because, you know, it's very easy when you're sitting behind your keyboard and plonking away. And then it's got to work for the reader. And if it doesn't, for any reason, I mean, it is only an opinion. Everybody has one. People, you know, like different things. So, yeah, but Mum is like that, you know, she will be very honest and upfront, and rather than spare my feelings. And she doesn't spare, well, she does. She said, oh, I hope I haven't hurt Mike's feelings. I says, Mum, he would appreciate you being honest rather than say, oh, that was great if it's not.
Yeah, and I would say that, Elizabeth, if you're there listening again, thank you very much.
Mum's not listening, she's cleaning.
Oh, 91 years old and she's cleaning.
Oh, she's been on her hands and knees scrubbing this cooker, and anyway, I won't even go into it. But my mother is 91 going on 40.
I've showed people the videos of her dragging that bucket full of rocks down the drive, and
it was a whole lorry load.
That energy one.
Yeah, she's incredible.
So, Rebecca just asked another question.
Is there someone who has given you advice, Mike, like a mentor? Is there anyone who has given you mentor?
I mean, I'll answer that question starting with Sandy. I mean, book one. She didn't even know I was writing it before I published it. I walked into the living room one day and said, oh, by the way, I published a book yesterday. And she didn't even know what was going on. So she said, well, why didn't you let me see it before you did that? And I said, because I didn't want to. And when I finally got a copy of it and put it out there for her to read, it was there were places in it that I had to fix. I had to do a second edition. I had overlooked
Did you
so many
really?
little errors. And she said, you need to pay a little bit more attention to your detail when you're doing this. So I go over and over and over things, right and left. But I would have to say, from a storytelling standpoint, your mother has been one of the best people that I could have bounced things off of, because she will tell me when my story is just a timeline, and she says, I'll be writing in Wayward Son, when the main characters ended up falling in love and getting married. I was talking about the wedding, and the fact that they fell in love and were getting married, and that the ceremony was held on this date. And then your mother asked me some weird question. Well, what color was their dress, or how salty was the food? And to me, that is some of the best feedback that I've ever gotten, because I keep going back to that. When I keep going back to that, it just reminds me that that I need to pay attention to things other than, A plus B equals C. There are several incremental half steps in between all of that stuff that makes the story even more readable.
Damned animals. Yeah, I mean, my mother read the Germans twice.
She didn't like it
the
at
whole
first, did
thing.
she? She didn't like it at first, did she?
She did not like it. She said it wasn't her thing. But yes, she enjoyed it. But she went through it. She read it first, and then she went through with a more critical eye the second time. And that's when she gave you the feedback, and then and she was writing down, well, I think that put a bit more oomph in it, embroider a bit, because Mum likes flowers and perfumes and embroidery. So yeah,
Right.
she did enjoy the Germans. Yes.
So and I tried to remember when I was talking about some of the scenes in there, like the the well manicured flower beds in Volhynia, the stuff like that. I tried to remember her giving me that feedback to, okay, paint me the mental picture, and then she was astute enough to go through that entire book and said, you used this one word 57 times,
not
as
quite
a
57
transition,
times.
something like that anyway. And says, and so I went back and found alternate wording for those places, and it just worked.
We don't realize we're doing it.
No,
as
and it's a
authors, do we?
stylistic thing. You get into your own comfort zone and you start writing in the same way, and you write in a way that just gets stuck. And but then going back to Rebecca's question about the mentor. My cousin Vince out in California, he's 30 years older than I am. So he's 20 years older than I am. So he's 82. Our birthdays are 5 days apart, 20 years minus 5 days apart. And he does great with following my storylines. So, where your mother adds color, he adds consistency to my stories, and we'll actually go back to book one and said, hey, in book one you said this, and now in this book you're saying something else entirely. Which one is it? Which one of it are you going to push forward in the storyline?
I remember you telling me that, and you've had to alter something. Yeah. Wow, that's really good. He's really absorbed it all.
So anyway, Rebecca asked the question, and Bobby Bunker has joined us as well. Your friend.
Oh, bless him. Bless him. Hi, David.
So his name is David, but he goes by Bobby online.
Yeah, well, I knew him as a little boy as David, but everybody in the whole world knows him as Bobby.
Oh, okay.
Apart from those that knew him when he was a little lad, and they still call him David.
Right.
Bless him.
So Rebecca asked another question.
Right, your formatting skills are amazing, Mike. That takes talent. Did you learn from trial and error?
Yes. It was trial and error. Because once I started playing with a piece of software, it's one of those things where if I can't figure out how to do something, I'm going to find out how to do something and just keep going
Right.
until I do. I might not be the best person to teach you how to use that software, but I can certainly figure out how to use it myself. So, and then just being able to be consistent when you do learn those tricks to set things up. Like you always set up your pages this way, and you always set up. A lot of research says, okay, all the chapters have to start on an odd numbered page, right? Well, that causes all kinds of problems with making sure you get your page numbers right, or inserting blank pages or what they call epigraphs in between chapters. Little sayings, quotes, that sort of thing. Like I did all the way up through book 5, not so much in book 7. And 7, I may or may not be able to do it just because the way the storyline is breaking out. It's the length of the chapters is hitting so that one chapter ends on an even number page, the next one starts on the next odd number page. So there's really no room for separators, So
I kind of leave all that to you. I just write it and leave you to do the formatting.
And it doesn't take me long once I get started on it.
Yeah, Bobby said that's very interesting advice. It's very difficult to write a book. I mean, well, I just think it is. And especially to do the formatting, and I think that's why as I do anyway, I leave it all to you. I find it difficult to remember what we were taught at school about. You see, when I was learning to type and everything, we didn't do indentation. Everything was set on the left-hand side. But of course, with books and formatting, it's got to be indented. But I wouldn't have known that, even though I read book after book after book. It was something I hadn't noticed until you pointed out things to me, and I still don't do indentations.
Well, but that's easy because all I have to do is go in and change a paragraph formatting setting that I can just select an entire chapter and say, okay, whenever you encounter a return, the next line, the first line of the next first line starting a paragraph needs to be indented 0.2 of an inch. That's very easy to do, but it just you have to. When I sit down and work on a book, somebody else's book, yours, Rebecca's, Patty's, any of the three of you, I'm focused a chapter at a time. Okay. I will sit down and if I start a chapter, I don't stop in the middle of it. I don't get up, walk away from it, come back to it 2 days later, because there's so many things that you have to keep track of mentally as you're doing this to not only reformat, but read, edit, and repunctuate where necessary to put the book together. And, it is time consuming, mentally exhausting at times. But I like to shift from writing my own to editing somebody else's, because it's that mental gymnastics that keeps both sides of it fresh. So Pat,
I have discovered that there's a massive difference between being a storyteller and an author. It's an exhausting process for me. Are you a Sanachi? Is that the correct pronunciation?
It's probably one of those Scottish terms.
I'm sure. Or an author naturally. A Sanachi, I've never come across that word.
We'll have to ask Pat to explain it. Storyteller. She says it. Rebecca says it's storyteller.
Oh, okay.
So we'll get to the question. Thank you, Rebecca.
So therefore. Yes, thank you, Rebecca, for educating me.
Oh,
so you.
It's Irish. It's Irish, not Scottish.
Oh well, I wouldn't have known that. So, what are you then, Mike? A storyteller or an author, or are you both? I think you're
I would
both.
like to think I'm a little bit of both, but I think I'm more of an author than a storyteller. And I have to focus on making sure I'm telling a story and not just writing. So
Yes.
that's what I have to focus on.
I would consider myself more a storyteller than an author.
But you do it so well.
Oh, this is us supposed to be flattering you, Mr. Hurd, not the other way around.
Well,
Oh dear. Yes, I think you have to be both to. Oh,
so sorry.
that question. Rebecca's question's just as.
No, it
Yes,
wasn't a
I think
question.
you
She was
have
just
to be
making a
both to
statement.
create a good story. Yeah, well, yes.
So Patty came with it's Seneca is the
Oh, Seneca.
pronunciation. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I probably ought to write that word down or research it. I might come because you did. You came up with a great word in one of your books, and I hadn't come across it before. So I looked it up in the dictionary and I made a note of it, and I did actually use it in one. I can't remember what it was now. And I thought, what a great word! And it almost looked like it was a spelling mistake of a normal word, a much used word, and I can't think what it. It
I
was.
honestly can't remember myself because I remember you
No,
telling me about it.
yeah, it was something to do with a feigned expression, and I can't think of the word now. It doesn't matter. We're not talking about my books. We're talking about the Germans. So the Germans has gone live today, then, and
Yes, it
you've
did.
done pre-order. Have you received any pre-orders yet?
Yes.
Oh, good.
So
And
I'm not going to say how many, but
no, I
there's
wasn't going
been
to
some.
ask
And
you.
besides, it's like I told you at the
It's
beginning
early days.
the
It's
beginning
only
of the
gone
chat that
today.
it's about 24 hours behind. So
Now,
Rebecca
Rebecca's.
asked another question.
Yes, she does. She says, "How do you decide on the names for your fictional characters?"
I try to research what names would have been common for children being named in the period that the character was born in,
Okay.
as best I possibly can. I mean,
Yes,
if
because
you
you
go
won't have
back,
somebody with a
you
modern
wouldn't
name.
have,
Tracy.
Allison, I don't think was that common, 100 years ago, or some of the made up names that we're dealing with these days. But
That's right.
in the Germans in particular, those names are just largely based on research back into names that appeared repeatedly in the records for Volhynia, which was that German enclave in Imperial Russia where my great grandparents' families came from.
Mm-hmm.
So I do research to make sure that I'm using names.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. oh, forgive my ignorance. Yeah.
So it was a new word for me too.
Yeah. Well, very clever.
So we're down to just Rebecca, Patty, and Sandy, I think, watching right now. So does anybody else have any other questions? Rebecca, if the book, yes, it has. I was even up last night when it went live electronically, and it has hit all but one of the draft to digital distribution points. It was one of the library distribution points. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, Apple Books, it's out there. All of the European ones. The printed one, yes, it went live today as well.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And
What a shame we're not around a large dining table with lots of wine. No, Paddy. I mean, Mike and I are on H2O. Both. I mean, this is not gin and tonic. This is water. Cheers, Mike. Congratulations.
thank you.
And thank you for sending me the next batch. I haven't started to read it yet, but obviously I will be reading it this week.
Just watch out for chapter 10.
I know you did give me a little bit of a heads up on that, so I look forward to reading it.
So we've been going at this for not quite an hour. Hopefully people will watch the broadcast offline later.
Yes,
thank you,
when
Rebecca.
they come home from work.
I would hope so. Unfortunately, the time difference gets in the way once in a while, and I really didn't.
Yeah.
This would have been a perfect week to try to shift it later on my side, just because the gap between the East Coast here and UK and Portugal is only 4 hours right at the moment for what, 6 days, 7 days. So we would have been able to accommodate a little bit later time shift, but I really didn't want to keep you up past your bedtime.
Well, when it came up on my Facebook, which says 2000 hours, and I said to Mum, that's 8 o'clock. Yet Paddy said she'd spoken to Mike and he said it was 7 o'clock. So if Paddy hadn't have told me that she'd spoken to you to say it was 7 o'clock, I would have been, not tuning in till 8. Well, just before 8, because that's what it says on Facebook. But I think that's because the clocks were altered at the weekend.
Right.
So when you first set it up, it would have been 8 o'clock.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So.
But
So
you
said when we were chit-chatting earlier that you had another humorous / comical question to ask. I've been sitting here with in anticipation of that moment. Did you ask it already and I missed it?
Yeah. It was it was if you ever came across one of your books at a garage sale, or I said as
okay, all right.
English
So that was
would say
that
car boot sale, how would you react? Would you say, hey, this is my book, who wants my autograph? Well, and you answered the question.
If somebody wanted to buy it, I'd sign it on the spot.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And that's another thing. How do that is something I haven't written down, but I did mean to ask you this. On you can put up a signature so that you can sell, your books can be sold with your signature on them. Do many people ask for a signed copy? Do you find that beneficial?
I haven't had anybody try to order books directly from me yet. They've all gone through the other retailers. So there isn't really a good way of doing that, but I can add an electronic autograph to the books.
That's what I'm referring to.
Yes, I can do that, but they have to order the book directly from me, or I could include it. In each copy of the book, but that defeats the whole purpose of it because it's not personal. When I do the electronic autograph in the book, I actually include a very very personal note to the person buying the book.
Do many people ask for that, for the automatic autograph?
No, I've just done it for the people because they were good friends of mine.
Okay, right.
And then there've been a couple where I've direct shipped, like my cousin on the West Coast. I've direct shipped books to him as thank yous for for his contribution to the process. And I will insert electronic autographs in those, or I'll have them shipped here first and then sent out to the West Coast. Well, that gets really expensive unless I order it from Amazon Prime, get it for free shipping, and then only have to pay shipping once instead of twice.
You see, for me now, it's so difficult because of Brexit,
right?
Portugal, and the books, the postage is horrendous, and then we have to pay customs on top of that. So I'm gonna, I haven't got any of mine, but anyway, we're talking about you now. Paddy here says, are you going to read a small excerpt from the book? And many congratulations to you, Mike. I'm so very glad Lisa pushed my stuff under your nose. Sorry.
I'm going to try to find, let me see if I can pull up book 6 here. We'll bring it up in the ebook format. Let's see. Lisa, you've read the book. So is there any place you think that might be a good place for me to go?
No, go ahead.
Okay, let me find something here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's just start with the first 2 paragraphs of the book. I mean, I've got those in front of me, and you know, I can do that. This is from chapter 1 of the Germans Lineage series, book 6. Springtime had come to the small village of Ostro with the last melting of the winter snow. It was an idyllic but bucolic setting. The thatched roof cottages with smoke rising from their chimneys provided a backdrop for the many colors of spring flowers coming into bloom. Lawns as such were not yet in vogue, but the deep green of the grass between the flowers and the cart path provided a vivid contrast of colors. The sound of newborn lambs bawling in hunger was suddenly matched by the unmistakable piercing wail of a newborn child. Clara Fenstermacher had just given birth to a son. It was her 7th child born alive out of 9 pregnancies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sad. So she'd lost 2. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the big families, and child deaths were common.
Sometimes babies weren't even named until they were 6 months to a year old because the infant mortality rate was so high.
Yeah.
So Rebecca asks, are my books on sale in your Facebook shop as well? And Rebecca, we're going to have to talk about that one offline because I haven't figured out a way to open up the sales channel. They're listed on my shop, yes, but I haven't figured out a good way to open up the sales channel. So let's defer that question until a little bit later. And Rebecca asked another question. Let me close out of that one. She said she read the book as well, and let's see if I can find that section quickly.
She likes when the father dies.
Yeah.
And they take over the farm. Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember which place that was. Let's see. Storm. Do you remember what chapter that was, Rebecca?
I can't.
Because there are several places where people die in the book, and I'm just trying to remember which one. Okay, that would take me longer to find. Rebecca gave a better description. It's not that he died, but the description of the farm and how they knew he would soon farm and plant and have a better life. Let's see. The son got the farm, not the sister. I'm not finding it. We'll get back to that, or not, or just not for now. So unfortunately, Rebecca, I've got so many things going in about 3/4 of the way in. Okay, so that would be home farm. Okay. All right, I'm getting there. Rebecca, I'm not finding the exact spot, so we'll have to move on. Oh, okay. Was it okay? She said it was a good section that she remembered the most, and could see their vision and the controversy within the family, and that women did not usually inherit, which,
Yeah.
absolutely right. So, and I do remember writing that, but I can't find it very quickly right at the moment.
No.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, maybe this is it. In Werner's will, he left all of his farm to Martha and her new husband, James Benson. James was from nearby Lincoln Township and grew up on his parents' farm. However, it was not as successful as Werner's farm. The Bensons did not have the financial wherewithal to help the newlyweds get their start in life that way. Werner had helped Herman and Olga because James and Martha had lived with Werner for the past several years and supported Werner as his mobility steadily declined. It was only logical that they inherit the original Waldheimer farm. And then it goes on talking about Werner's funeral. Was that the place, Rebecca? Because that's the only place I talk about anybody really inheriting anything, using the word inherit.
It was quite a big thing for them to do, wasn't it? The family to buy their children different farmsteads. They set
Right.
the eldest two up first, didn't they, in
Yes.
their own, and then
Yeah.
bought another farm, and then they did the same for their other children. It was a big thing to do. They must have been, quite affluent.
Mm-hmm. Well, farmers generally fared well, at least in that part of Michigan during the Great Depression. The farming community was self-sustaining, was very profitable, and as long as they had an outlet market, through the ships going back and forth Lake Michigan between Berrien County, Michigan, and Chicago, there was a market for the produce. So, but I think, Rebecca, I want to read a little bit more there, just because it illustrates some of the other things that were going on. The next paragraph continues. Werner Waldheimer's funeral was a simple affair, attended by many of the local farmers and numerous other immigrants from Volhynia that he had helped get settled in the area. Martha took the loss of her father the hardest and was nearly inconsolable at the graveside committal service. As Pastor Schimmel intoned, Asche zu Asche, Staub u Staub, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, Martha completely lost her composure. She buried her face against her husband's chest and remained there for the remainder of the service. Her sobs, almost embarrassing in their volume and intensity, were audible to everyone in the audience. The pastor droned on in German, "We commit the body of thy servant Werner Waldheimer to the ground." As the casket reached the bottom of the grave, it was Herman's job as the oldest and only male offspring to throw a symbolic handful of dirt onto the casket. The sound of the dirt hitting the wood brought with it a finality that elicited another round of wailing from Martha. She did not expect to have buried both of her parents before she herself had produced children of her own. Somber, really somber. And I had to go back and, since most of my family was Lutheran, I had to go back and research what churches in the area still held services in German into the mid 1900s, all of that stuff, and it was just a lot of extra research into the linguistic aspect of things back then, and even reaching out to old church records and newspaper clippings to find out from the listings in the paper when this particular church had German services, and then finding out about when it stopped, And one of the churches even had services in German until 1983.
Wow. That's incredible.
So anyway, so we've gone past an hour. Last chance for questions for the people that are still here. We've got four viewers now, Patty, Rebecca, and I think Sandy may still be there, and then one other. So it could still be David/Bobby. But I think there have been a couple of people coming and going. So last chance for questions before we wrap this up.
how do you celebrate, Mike, once you've finished your book? What do you
What
do?
we're doing, what we're doing right now.
Oh, I didn't know if that you had some little, you probably had a little tipple or something, or I don't know.
I might open a bottle of wine later. I'm not sure yet.
Mm.
So, but so anyway,
The great
so I
thing
guess
is,
this would be a good time to wrap this up. This has been. Do you want to close it out, or do you want me to?
you can, Mike, because I'll stay on for another second or two afterwards and
Okay.
have a chat.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
because we can chat
Thank
offline
you.
after I shut down the broadcast. So, but anyway, I'd like to thank everybody who joined us either live
Yes,
or
you.
offline. This has been the virtual launch party for my latest book, The Germans, Lineage Series Book 6, which went live today in both electronic and paperback forms and is available from any bookseller. Both online and through in-store ordering. The books are orderable, and I would encourage people, instead of using the monolith that starts with A, to order their books from their local independent bookseller. And my host today has been Lisa Talbott. I'll let her sign off from here.
Okay, well, it's good evening from Portugal. Oh, thank you, Sandy. I don't think it was as good as the job that your husband does when he's the narrator, not the narrator. Thank you everybody for joining in, and it's been fun, Mike. I've enjoyed it. I'm a bit nervous. I'm not very good at this kind of thing, but I've done my best.
Lisa, you did just fine. You did
Thank you
just
very
fine.
much. Well, you did amazing job, Mike. I mean, you're sitting there so calm and relaxed and informative. It just rolls off your tongue.
Well, thank you. All right, so I'm going to shut down the broadcast. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and hopefully you'll take a chance on reading my newest book.